And then I was like, where's crew? Like, I started walking back to Connor, and I was like, where's crew? And he's like, I don't know, I haven't seen him. And that was just like a moment of panic. I was like, oh my gosh, we're in the airport. I told him to go back and find him, and he like couldn't find him.
Now that we are home, kind of got our house organized. We're still not there, but look at this. Oh, organization.
Who did this part?
Britt did that one.
Yours truly.
This one was mine, the fridge. I deep cleaned it. I did the seasonings.
Look at all of our Trader Joe's seasonings.
Yeah, we have
a
fleet.
Oh my gosh, it feels so good to be organized.
We just like decluttered everything. I feel like when you come home from a trip after being gone for so long and living in just a little bit of suitcases, you kind of realize you can live without a lot. So then you're like, I just want to.
It's so true. We threw away probably like 7 garbage bags of stuff. Like
yeah,
4
we gave away a bunch of stuff, threw away a bunch of stuff.
Boom! Banks is asleep.
So we figured it would, now that we've recovered from our trip, it'd be funny to talk about all of our fails that happened, because there was quite a few of them. And honestly, traveling with kids, you have a lot of fails, and traveling for as long as we did, there was just a lot of like moments where we just totally messed up. We made a running list, and if you guys like it, we might do a part 2, so let us know if you want a part 2. So ding ding ding, number 1 was my big error. When we flew from Utah to Boston to go to Cape Cod, we get there at 3 a.m. on a day, I forget what date it was, and we drive an hour and a half to the Airbnb, and it is...
Boys are like dead asleep.
It was a terrible night. It was a long night. We flew through the night. Anyways, arriving to the Airbnb, the sun is slowly coming up. You can see the sunrise. And I go to open the door to the Airbnb, like go and open it, but it doesn't seem like crazy clean. It was like clean, but it wasn't like prepped perfectly for guests. And there was a door that went up into like the main part of the house, because the Airbnb was like the basement. I was like, that's weird. So I shut the door.
The door is open.
Yeah, the door was open to like the main part of the house. So I shut that, go out, and then I see the light flick on upstairs, like of the home. I was like, that's weird. Tell Brett and the boys like, all right, we're good to go. And then the front door opens, and this guy comes out, and he's like, hey, what you doing? And I was like, oh, we're the Airbnb guests we're showing. He's like, yeah, you're supposed to show up later today after 4. I was like, oh.
We were like delirious at this point.
I was like about to.
We were like, oh, okay. Like
I couldn't believe it.
I think we like had basically like
moved everything into the
moved
house.
all the suitcases in.
And he was like, he's like, you're supposed to check in later today. I was like, oh my goodness, because in my mind I was like, oh, we arrive like the 18th, so we check in the 18th, but the 18th at 4 a.m. is very different from 4 p.m. because they're ready. He was so nice, the best host ever.
Nice, like they were probably one of the best hosts we had all summer.
Yeah, they let us go in, stay the night, and he's like, we'll figure everything out in the morning.
And he didn't even charge us for an extra day, but we were so nervous because, well, we were just so lucky there wasn't someone staying there.
Yeah, because if someone was staying there, we would have been toast. Number 2, if they said we couldn't, there wouldn't have been a place to sleep that night. Like, there was no hotel. We probably would have slept in the car, and I would have been in deep trouble.
Because the sun was coming up in like 2 hours.
Yeah, so that was a fail. That was a big fail.
That was a big fail. Another travel fail that was my fault. So we're like taking turns because they're not all Connor's fault. We were in Paris. I think I had known there were multiple airports, but I don't know if I just like didn't realize that they would be so far away from each other or something. But we arrived to Paris, and well, before we had gone there, I was looking it up when we were in Nice, and I realized that like there were 2 different airports. So I go to look them up, and they're like an hour away, like an hour and a half away from each other. And I was like, oh. The reason this was a big deal is because that we were flying out of Paris to go to New York, and that was our long overnight flight that we were the most nervous about, had the most like anxiety about. And we were now gonna have to drive an hour and a half on top of that, and we didn't have a car, so we were gonna have to like pay for a taxi. I was so stressed, so I like called all these hotels by this other airport to see if we could stay like by the right airport, and all of them were booked. And the other weird thing was none of them would allow 4 guests. Like, everyone was saying that we would have to get 2 rooms, even though it was just, like, a baby. Like, we have a baby and, like, a 3-year-old. I was like, we can definitely fit in 1 room. Like, we'll all, like, share a bed if we have to. And they were like, no, it's 4 guests, so you have to get 2 rooms. So we were like, we've never booked 2 rooms as a small family. That is so weird. So we ended up just staying at the hotel by the airport that we flew into and taking a taxi all the way to the other airport, which sucked. It cost like $100.
And it was
And
just
they
like
didn't have
stop
car
and go
seats. It
traffic.
was like crap.
It was just stressful.
But at least we got there, and it ended up not being as bad as we had hoped, but that was a travel fail on my part. I just didn't think to check like how far the airports were, like what exact airport. I think also because it was the end of our trip, I was starting to get the point where I was just kind of like quickly planning it instead of like actually like doing the double checking. So that was a big travel fail.
Yeah, that was. Okay, the next one. I don't know. Do we both take the fall for this?
Yeah.
So we're staying in Split, Croatia, and we're staying in Old Town where you can't park in the town. So you have to park in like a parking lot and find a parking space, and you have to walk into the town because no cars were allowed. So anyways, we go to the place where the recommended spot was from the Airbnb host. We showed up kind of later at the end of the day. So parking works from like 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. They don't charge you. And we were super tired getting back. We still had to walk back to our Airbnb.
And there was like literally no parking.
Couldn't find one spot.
And we didn't want to have to find. We should have just gone to a different parking lot.
We didn't want to try to find another one.
But
It was just like a stressful moment. But I saw all these cars parked in handicap spots, and like cars were parked super illegally. And I like looked at them. None of them had stickers. And I remember being told that it didn't matter until 6 a.m. and you can move your car at 6 a.m. So we were like, all right, screw it. Park in a handicap spot.
Well, and we were just thinking we'll come out and leave, like, move our car before
Then the next morning we were going sailing, and so I was like, oh, I'll just wake up early, go move the car, and then we'll go sailing and it'll be fine. We woke up forgot about the car. We go sailing. We come back. We then wanted to go somewhere. We go to find the car.
It was 5 p.m. the next day. It was late.
Car had been towed to some Croatian place.
We got our car towed, so I'm catching an Uber to go pick it up.
Luckily, there was a cop like
who could barely speak English.
This guy like nearby, and we were like, okay, we'll go like talk to him.
He had to call and tell me where I could go. He had to go call the place, see if the car was there. Luckily, he did it for me because I could not speak Croatian.
He was like, well, did you park in like a bad spot? And we were like, yeah. Like,
so
it was
embarrassing.
just funny to actually admit that like we like
I parked in the handicap spot.
We like were dumb and parked in a bad spot.
Anyways, had to take an Uber across town to go get our car, and I got a ticket.
I just stayed at the park with the boys nearby.
I got a nice old ticket and had to pay for towing. But if we're looking at a bright side of a really sucky situation, was that normally, like, I've had my car towed in Utah before, and it was like $500.
Oh yeah.
And they told me it was gonna be like, it was like a big number in kunas in their currency, but it ended up being for the parking ticket and the towing, it ended up being $100.
That is the scary thing about Croatia. Their kunas are like
it's like 7 to 1.
$1, so everything sounds like so much money. We're like, oh my gosh. But it didn't end up being that much. So the Croatian gods were on our side.
Next place. Let's take you to Milos, Greece. This was my fault.
How many is that?
I think that's 3.
What? Just kidding. Connor accidentally misplaced Banks's sandals that we brought on this trip.
1 pair of shoes for the guy.
If you are on an international trip and you've been anywhere international with a baby, you know it is very hard to come across baby shoes like that fit like a 1-year-old, and especially baby sandals. So we luckily were in this town that has a port, so there were like actual shops there, and because it's a really small island, and so we went to like all these shops. We were asking people like baby shoes, baby sandals, and they were like, oh, this one. So we were like going to all these shops, and we finally come to this one, and literally this was like our last resort. If not, we were just like, I guess he'll just wear it. He had 1 other pair of shoes. They were sneakers, but we were just like gonna be at the beach a lot and in the sand and the water, and that was just like not gonna go well. So they were like, oh yes, we have sandals, and they pull out these crab Crocs. They had crabs.
It was awesome.
They were awful. And they were bright, like neon blue. And I was like,
Purple and blue.
we'll take them. We'll take them.
And so we get the Crocs. And we have them for one day. And I try to fit them on Banks' feet. He doesn't love putting shoes on, really clothes on, or diapers. And he was like fighting me. And I like kind of like forced him on. And then the strap broke. So we just paid for these Crocs on this.
They were only like $10, but we were like, dang it, that did not last long.
So luckily we went back to the store. They gave us new ones, and it ended up working out.
And we left the Crocs in Europe because I said no way we're taking those.
I thought they were a fashion statement, and Britt was not a fan.
I was not a fan. We still need to get him new sandals.
2 more.
We have lots of other ones, but they're like not as big of fails. But
if you want a part 2, we can do that.
yeah, we got lots. We got a big list. So this one was 100% my fault. Connor wasn't even involved. And it was like a huge mom. I would just like a huge mom fail moment for me. Like
To start the
it
trip.
was so stressful. So we hadn't even left the United States yet. We're in the Salt Lake City airport and we're on our way to Boston, and our flight got delayed. It was delayed like an hour and a half probably. And so we were just kind of trying to kill time. So we were switching off with the boys, and Connor was taking a break and I was watching the boys. Crew had his little travel scooter through the airport, and I had Banks in the stroller. And we were all hungry, so we stopped at Jamba. I stopped with them at Jamba. We got a smoothie, and I was trying to feed Banks a smoothie, and Crew was riding a scooter up and down like the airport with this, and he was kind of like playing with this other kid that was there. And they were kind of getting like a little out of control, and I kept telling him like, Crew, you need to slow down, like you're gonna hit someone. And he kind of wasn't listening. You know how 3-year-olds are when they're with their friends. They wasn't listening, wasn't paying attention. And he starts coming towards Banks, and he's not slowing down at all. He's going so fast, he's not even looking at us, and he runs straight into Banks. The smoothie explodes everywhere, and Banks falls back on his face. He like falls down and like lands somehow like on his nose. His nose starts bleeding like crazy, and I thought for sure it knocked his teeth out. And so I was like,
So scary.
I was like freaking out because the smoothie is literally all over the floor. There was like blood all over. I was wearing a white shirt.
Banks is sobbing.
And Banks is like sobbing, and I was so frustrated at Crew. And I was like, I told Crew, I think like it was just like a really stressful moment, and I was like, Crew, he was like, I'm gonna go back to Dad, and I was like, okay, just
at
go.
this point, Britt's going to the bathroom.
Oh yeah. So I had to go to the bathroom to get
It's
okay.
all
So I had to
cleaned
go
up.
to the bathroom to get all cleaned up, but I had the stroller, which also like it was a double stroller, which wouldn't fit through the bathroom door because it was like this huge double bob.
No, it wasn't double
I
bob.
can't
It
remember.
was the
Anyways,
double
it
stroller.
wouldn't fit through the bathroom door, so I asked this lady if she'd like watch the stroller because she was like, "How can I help?" And Crew was like, "I'm gonna go back to Dad," and I was like, no,
I
Crew, you
was,
need
like,
to stay by me.
4
But he started like
gates
fighting
away.
me about it. He's like, no, I'm gonna go. And I was like, oh my gosh, fine. Like, just go tell him that like that Banks got hurt. And in that moment, I thought totally like Crew would be able to find him. Like it was just like
4
I thought we
gates,
were
5 gates
pretty
away.
close. But in my mind, we weren't that far away.
And at this moment, the plane started to board. So I was trying to text Britt and get a hold of her
But
and
Banks
call her.
is like bleeding. Like I already had blood all over my shirt. It
Her
was
white
like all over
shirt,
his
she was
shirt.
not happy.
He was sobbing. I was trying to see if his teeth were knocked out. Anyways, trying to like get stuff to clean up the floor that had just made this huge mess. Luckily I come out and the lady had like cleaned up the floor. But I came out and then I started to like walk back to the gate, and we had like paper towels. At this point I could see Connor had texted me. I was trying to text him, push a stroller and carry Banks and cover his nose. And then I was like, where's Crew? Like I started walking
She
back to Connor and I was like,
called.
where's Crew? And he's like, I don't know, I haven't seen him. And that was just like a moment of panic. I was like, oh my
Pandemonium.
gosh,
Like,
we're in
our
the airport.
heart sank.
I told him to go back and find him, and he like couldn't find him.
Oh.
And oh my gosh, I was so stressed. So we started looking for him, can't find him. I'm like crying. I'm like sobbing at this point.
yeah, this was
I was like, dude,
terrifying.
this is the worst moment ever. Like I just lost my 3-year-old, and
in the airport.
on his
and
scooter, which he can go so fast. So I was like, how far
What if
did
he
he go?
went
And the Salt Lake
out?
City airport's like pretty big. You
It's
can
like
go for a
one
long,
super
time.
long terminal.
I was like, what are we gonna do? Like, we're gonna miss our flight. All of our bags were over there. Oh my gosh, it was so stressful. This lady was like, "Can I help you?" We kept looking, and people like could tell that we were stressed. So they were like, "Can we help?" And we were like, "Yeah."
We lost
I've
our-
seen like a 3-year-old on a blue scooter. I was like,
You
sobbing.
can't even like speak clearly because you're just thinking like
So
the
stressed.
scariest things.
We've never like lost him like
Ever.
that before.
And so, Britt starts going one way. This lady said, we got a hold of airport security. We said, little boy with a scooter and a Lightning McQueen backpack in a blue outfit. And so then I start booking it down the opposite end of the terminal. And just like, where is he? Where is he? Where is he? And I get to like the last gate and he's there just talking to this lady. And he's totally fine. I was like, oh my goodness, crew. We thought we lost you.
What was he saying to the lady?
He said, oh, I was asking her where Dada was.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh
Oh,
my
I felt
goodness.
so bad.
He was like,
People were so
not
nice.
scared.
They were like,
yeah.
"That's happened to me before," like talking to us about it. But I was like,
And then-
I will never recover. And I flew all the way to Boston with blood all over my shirt.
And we were just so grateful we found him. Our last fail that we'll speak about. This was a mutual fail. This is back to Paris. So we basically we're an hour away from the Eiffel Tower.
This
and
was the worst fail.
we wanted to
ever.
do two things. We wanted to see the Eiffel Tower and go to Disneyland Paris for our basically 48 hours that we were there.
In our Paris vlog. So if you saw it, you've seen this story.
In detail.
But we'll just kind of like do the condensed version of it. Basically, we had to rent a car in Paris and we had to drive to the Eiffel Tower. We thought it wouldn't be that big of a deal. And it was a big deal. Connor did amazing. I could not have driven in the city. It was
Traffic
so
was nuts.
stressful. And we finally found a parking spot, but it was not by the Eiffel Tower. We ended up getting dinner and we ended up renting or Ubering to the Eiffel Tower. On our way back, Connor's phone died and we thought
Back
like,
to the car.
Back to the car. Not too big of a deal. It was like 10 p.m. at this point, and my phone was getting really close to dying. It was
It
at
had like 10%.
yeah.
And we had to use it for Uber, and it was slowly dropping in the Uber. We got into the Uber, mapped our directions. Phone started to die, and
In our car.
yeah, we got into our car. Phone was like slowly dying. Then we started to memorize the directions on how to get
Yeah,
there.
we were like literally had 5%, and we had an hour drive home.
We tried to memorize the directions. We're an hour and like 20 minutes away.
I messed up. One of the words was like Royce and something and Royce Port. There were like two words that had like basically the same exact name, and we took the wrong exit, and that was my bad. And we ended up having to stop at a hotel and buy a charger. It's like 11:30. Both the boys are asleep in the car.
was
And we didn't think we were gonna make it home. We were terrified, gonna be lost forever. But we got a charger.
We
Made
made
it
it home
home.
at like midnight, but it was seriously so stressful because we were driving in Paris, trying
Stressful.
to use them like with no phones, like completely dead, trying to just like remember what exit to take, remember like what the names of things were, remember
In
what
French.
things looked like. It was like one of those moments where I was like, how did people get around like without maps?
MapQuest back in the day.
I remember that. So that was a crazy, crazy moment. If you want the full details, go watch the Paris vlog.
Yes. Other than that, we do have some really good moments, but those
A
were
lot of
our
good memories.
our travel
It's always
fails.
funny to like remember the travel fails though, because there's bound to be some, especially
With
it was our
kids.
first Europe trip with the boys. It's our first international trip with Banks,
Yeah,
and with two kids, obviously, like under
adds the
with
stresses.
3. So
But we have a couple ideas for more videos. If you do want to see a part 2 to this, or like our top days on the trip, we can go into detail on that too.
That'd be fun.
Thanks for watching. Love
And
you guys.
we'll see you next week. Have a good weekend.
Bye.